Hey everyone, and welcome to the Building Geniuses podcast, where we talk to geniuses throughout the commercial real estate and building automation industries, asking them how they've gotten where they are, who's walked alongside them, and how they're helping others along the way. This is episode 6 of season 1, and I'm your host, Tim Vogel. In today's episode, we're speaking with Phil Zito of the Smart Buildings Academy. Hey Phil, welcome to the Building Geniuses podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. It's kind of cool, man. I've watched y'all's stuff for the longest time, and just kind of a brief shout out, like your YouTube sets a standard for how I feel other businesses should do their YouTubes. It's not like marketing fluff. It's actual useful stuff that I can refer our students to. And I can be like, hey, you want to see how to install Simply VAV, or you want to see how to go and troubleshoot and bifurcate BACnet? Like, go and watch these videos. They actually do it. So it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much. You know, it was several years ago, we went down this road to try to build content that was actually meaningful. Mm-hmm. And we have coined ourselves the Building Geniuses, and that's what we're naming the podcast after, the Building Geniuses podcast. And what we talked about very early on before we did that was, if we're going to be the Building Geniuses, let's show it off, right? I mean, let's talk through what we know and what we've done and all the products we sell, yes, but let's really have valuable content. And so thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that. Now, you yourself are like a content guru. I see you all over the place on LinkedIn. Yeah. Perhaps that's a moniker you'd like to leave aside. But you really are dedicated to building content and resources. So to get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what the Smart Buildings Academy is and why you founded it?
Sure. So we're the largest provider of online, self-paced, and now instructor-led training for the building automation industry. We focus on vendor-agnostic, skill-based training, and we believe that the gap and the delay in developing talent in the industry comes from the fact that OEMs are awesome at teaching their products, and they should be. That's expected. What is missing from the industry is a rapid path to identify and train people on the core knowledge sets, HVAC, BAS, IT, that are required to build a solid foundation, and then to teach them the processes. And that's a word I'll come back a lot to during this interview. The processes to execute building automation work efficiently.
Yeah. So let's just start there then. Why processes?
One of the questions you sent over, and you were like, hey, how did you learn what you learn? And what do you feel is the most important for people to know? And if you go and you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. But the gist of the answers are, do your time, you need HVAC, or you need electrical, or you need something. And we're of the mind, based on 10,000 plus students now, that you actually need processes. Because sure, you're going to run into that dual duct DOAS unit that's got some weird Modbus / LAN interface. You know, they've got 2 different interface cards for some reason, one for the recovery wheel and another one for the actual unit. And you've got to make it all work together. But that's like a percent of a percent of a percent. Majority of folks are doing rooftop units. They're doing BACnet chiller interfaces. They're doing VAV boxes. And if you could teach them the foundational processes and checklists, then they can do that, and they can learn the skills associated with that. I feel like that's the biggest miss of an industry, and that's across all the trades. If you look at a lot of the apprenticeship programs, they were built to a model of multi-year program because the tools that exist today did not exist when these apprenticeships were built. And so we still follow that OJT, follow the guy around, carry his tools around. Eventually you'll be able to touch stuff. And if we're able to instill processes and process thinking in people, then they're going, and this is another thing you'll hear me refer back to quite often, they're going to be profitable. And profit, at the end of the day, I know it's kind of a 3-letter word right now in our culture, but without profit, a business is going to dissolve. And so you can be the best tech in the world, but if you can't make profit for your business, you are going to be let go before the tech who is making profit for the business. The tech that's pulling in service orders, change orders, that tech is going to be kept. And I've seen that play out in my own career over someone who's got 30 years experience, but doesn't bring in any profit to the business and is just checking a box.
Now, Phil, you founded the Smart Buildings Academy, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And how many people now are inside your organization?
So we have 6 now. We're a very lean organization. That kind of ties back to our process methodology. Everything we do is through tools like Asana, Microsoft Flow, different LMS automation software, and that's learning management system software. And that enables us to do more with less.
No, that's great. So where did you develop this kind of this affinity or appreciation for processes? Because it seems like there's, that's kind of a very specific kind of person that typically falls into, it's like, hey, we need to be process driven.
Mm-hmm. So I have severe ADHD, like almost non-functional. And the only way I've been able to maintain a marriage, stay employed, not put on like 400 pounds is processes. Get up in the morning. I have a very specific process from the moment my Raycon earbuds sit in a very specific spot. My water bottle sits in a specific spot. And I follow a process, and that takes away the thinking and it takes away the emotion, and you just do the process. When you're dealing with contractors yelling at you, you're dealing with the chaos of a service call for a hospital where literally water's dripping on someone during an open heart surgery because bearings on an inlet vein flew through a cooling coil because they didn't want to do a pneumatic upgrade, and they should have, but that's neither here nor there. But, they're like, fix this now. That becomes a whirlwind of chaos. And if you can fall back on processes, and this is kind of something I picked up in the military, is very procedural. How do you take someone who's an undisciplined civilian, and I say that jokingly, but you take someone and then within 3 months you turn them into someone who can, be on a ship in the middle of the ocean and resolving critical failures. Like our prop fell off of our guided missile destroyer, and it had to get towed back into the sea, from the Sea of Japan into Japan. And that's chaos because props counterspin, and so the ship's spinning in a circle, and you can't, just turn it off, and you can't use the rudder. It'll rip the rudder off. So, yeah, that's chaos. Everyone's panicking, and they fall back to processes.
And so you've learned quite a bit of process through military service then.
It helped me solidify a process. This is going to go totally meta. A process for developing processes.
Yeah.
That's what the military helped me really like. It gave me a safe place to mature, to really kind of figure out how to establish processes. And then I brought that into working in the building automation space.
So over 10,000 students later, you've made a huge impact. And that's exactly why I've heard so much about you. Your name gets whispered in every trade show I think I've been to in the last year and a half. So you're absolutely making waves and helping in a good way, not bad waves. Ripples in a good way. And so thank you for that so much. When did you get into the industry?
2007. So I left the Navy. I was a weapons specialist in the Navy in 2007. I left, and I had a choice to work at a soap factory, a glass factory, or in this thing called building automation. So I went on Wikipedia and I memorized all I could about HVAC because I had changed filters on the ship. And so the Orion military recruiter was like, well, put down you have HVAC experience. And I was like, well, I changed filters. And they're like, yeah, it's close enough. And so I memorized enough to get through the job experience. And then next thing I know, I'm in a 4-week Allerton class and they're like, hey, okay, you've learned programming. You're going to go program a central utility plant. And I'm like,
Yep.
looking like, is this a plant in a pot, like in a corner, like a fern? I have no idea
Yeah.
what a plant is.
Yeah, you didn't teach me what a plant was in the last 4 weeks.
No. And so I'm sitting there. I didn't open the ISO valves on this carrier chiller, and it's like deadheading, and the mechanics are just like shaking their head. And in my typical jovial nature, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's supposed to do that. Yeah. I mean, you could, even having no HVAC experience, you could tell that does not sound good when it's like, boom. And you're just like, yeah. So it was trial and error.
Yeah, an undocumented feature.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it was.
That's sudden start and sudden stop.
That's right. Yeah. No one else can do this except Phil.
Yep, I should have patented it. Take the life off your chiller.
You joined the industry, so to say, in 2007. You have excellent Wikipedia page memory. Amazing.
Yep.
You worked for a contractor? Was that kind of what you did for a while?
Yeah, I worked for an Allerton contractor. And then I went to work for another Allerton contractor. Wife wanted to move back to the Midwest, so went to work for another one in mid 2007. It was just West Coast wasn't really her thing. Mm-hmm. And so we went there, and then 2008 hit, and I'm seeing everyone get let go left and right. Mm-hmm. And that is like when my first mentor came up, and he was like, Phil, the smartest techs aren't the ones who get to stay. It's the ones who make profit for the business. And that sat with me for the longest time. And it really, like, folks were, how are you making the salary you're making after only 2 years as a tech? And it was because I, through this mentor, made the connection of, all right, if you bring money into the business and you can 3x what it costs the business, that tends to be my judgment zone is 3x. If you could 3x what it costs a business to pay for you, you can tend to write your own ticket. You know, you can tend to go and you'll make a lot through pull through work, stuff like that over time. But you'll also become valuable to the business. Because I saw guys who were way smarter than me, but they just weren't there anymore because they weren't providing a value add to the business.
Yeah.
So it was very eye-opening to me.
And that's quite a professional trait to develop, too. I mean, it's a mindset that you put yourself in. But, you know, you could also do it in a very sort of self-serving way, or you could do it from a servant, like kind of a servant's perspective of like, hey, these people are hiring me to do a job. I want to now turn around and provide value to them. That's obviously valuable to them. But then that's also, you know, good for me in the long term. Who was that first mentor? Do you mind me asking?
That was Don Kelly.
Don Kelly. What was his role at the time?
He was service manager / branch manager.
Yeah. So what were some of the was this like an official mentorship sort of thing, or was it more informal?
Actually, funny enough, so he was JCI. So I went back to another Allerton training, and I was sitting at a bar, and I forget how we met, but we started talking, and he was like, yeah, I'm looking for a lead service tech. And I was like, I've always had an overestimated self-confidence. Folks either like it on LinkedIn or they don't. Yeah. Some folks find me to be arrogant. It's only because I believe that we're, as an industry, capable of more than the status quo. Yeah. But that can come across as arrogance. So he was sitting there and he was like, yeah, I need a lead service tech. And I was like, I could do that. And he was like, well, you've only been in the industry for 2 years. I'm like, well, I can still do it. And he's like, I think you're full of shit. And I was like, well, yeah, maybe, but hire me and find out. And, you know, he hired me and I brought in a lot of money for him.
Yeah. You should just carry like a pair of dice in your pockets and just be like, here, just roll these.
There you go.
It'll be
Take
fine.
a chance.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Wow. And so from that encounter, he took a chance on you. And he just kind of continued to invest in you after that?
Yeah, that started a pretty long career at JCI. So, as a lead service, I sought out the jobs that seemed like they were interesting because you mentioned servant leadership versus self-serving. I would say I was definitely very self-serving until probably my mid 30s. I had, I don't want to say low self-esteem, but definitely I associated me making money and advancing with self-worth. And so, I mean, I had these crazy ideas like I'm going to be the CEO of Johnson Controls, or I'm going to be the chief engineer of like R&D.
Yeah.
And I wasn't passionate about those things, but they to me signified, oh, you're worth something. So that's why I pursued them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, it just shifted in my 30s. It was weird.
And this was while you were in HVAC, obviously, having those kinds of dynamic dreams, which is great. I think dreams and shooting for the moon is a good thing, because even if you miss, you'll land amongst the stars. And that was my meme for the day. You're welcome.
Hey, but all seriousness, I mean, that is true.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't take on goals because they think they could potentially fail. And I'm like, you could fail at, a $10 million revenue goal and hit 8 million, but you still hit 8 million.
Yeah, you did.
That's better than, not even attempting it.
So, Don pours into you, teaches you some things. Was there anyone else kind of during that time, maybe around the time of your mid 30s when you made the switch mentally?
Yeah. So then I went to, there was a, what was it, like installation manager role, I think, in Dallas. And I went under Rick Van Buren, who he's a great guy. He then taught me the value of understanding like how a business runs. So Don taught me about, bringing profitability to the business. Rick taught me about how a business runs. He taught me about the politics of business, because there's politics in business. I mean, there just is.
What?
He taught me that. He taught me kind of how to tone down the military side of me. Because, I had guys and I was like, no, you're not leaving the job. I remember, it's funny looking back, but I remember keeping a technician out with me at a job site for a day and a half on Monster Energy drinks because we were going to finish this.
Yeah.
We do not leave until it's done.
Right. Yeah.
Which in retrospect was a little ridiculous.
Right. Well, the mission wasn't complete.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, he taught me to tone that down a little bit, and that I could accomplish things through people without working them like horses.
Yeah.
So I still fall back into that pattern every now and then. My team.
Into the equestrian pattern.
Yeah. My team affectionately jokes that, it's the laser beam of focus. As soon as I'm done with one task, I bring that laser beam on something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, that's it's the process, right? It's the
Exactly.
processes. Yeah. Yeah. I think too many times there's not enough process, but just like you said, it could be possible to over process things.
Very much so.
Yeah. And so as you're teaching others, bringing process into the fold, bringing profit, and really that's professionalism into the fold, how do you go about conveying those things? How do you teach them?
Stories. You've probably picked up by now. I tell a lot of stories. I mean, if you look at the historical nature of human beings, we're tribal. And so a lot of thousands upon thousands of years of passing information via stories. So that's interwoven into us. Additionally, I try to fail fast. We sell our courses before we've ever created them. And then every course we've ever done, we've sold before we've created it.
Yeah.
And then we create it alongside the students. And, we fall on our faces sometimes and we just adjust.
Yeah.
If we get a forum question repeatedly about a topic, then we know we're not teaching it effectively. And that's the beauty of online asynchronous training is it's very hard for a learning and development team to measure an instructor because all you have are exit exams and exit surveys. Versus if you're doing something online and asynchronous, you have direct feedback points of, okay, this individual video, because our videos are like 3 to 5 minutes long. So these individual videos did not resonate because we're getting a lot of forum questions. Let's re-record that and see if it fixes it. Or let's pick up the phone and call that student. And I will pick up the phone and I'll call them and be like, hey, let's spend 20 minutes talking through this, which isn't scalable. But at the same time, you do it a couple times, you can pretty quickly figure out where people are getting stuck.
Yeah.
So you do that. Use a lot of different modalities for learning. Modalities mean, what they mean is some people are kinesthetic, so they learn with their hands. Others are auditory, so they learn by hearing. Others are visual, so they learn by reading or seeing. So we try to intermix a bunch of modalities. Additionally, we do a lot of job task breakdowns. So we'll take a technician position and we'll break it down to the most minute tasks. Okay, installing a VAV. Well, let's take that even further. Connecting pitot tube, identifying which pitot tube is the high and the low side, those kind of things. And then based on that breakdown, we can say, is this a theory? So HVAC theory, controls theory, electrical theory, or is this a task? And if it's a theory, we teach it in our theory course. If it's a task, we teach it in our task course. And then we also do a Pareto principle, which is, that 20% of stuff that gets done 80% of the time. So we do a Pareto principle analysis of job tasks to say these job tasks are the 20% that are going to get done 80% of the time.
Yeah.
And then we base our training on that.
So how did you learn things like modality and how you would make trainings across these kind of different learning disciplines?
A lot of reading.
Yeah.
Just read constantly. I think I've got 14 books to read this summer.
Yeah.
Because I'm focused on improving our sales team and also creating a whole sales curriculum. So, that's kind of my focus right now. I'm reading a whole ton of books on sales, sales management, psychology of selling. So it's the same with training.
Are you currently selling that course?
We're going to be in the fall. Yeah, I'm going to create it. We're one OEM is exploring with us to create a sales training program for all of their contractors.
Oh, that's great.
So we already have some sales training programs. And so here's how it works behind the scenes. You'll know we're looking to sell a course because we'll shift our podcast topics. You're going to see a shift in podcast topics to sales, energy management, and internal facility operations. Because I think that those are going to be the three big areas. I think our industry is going to see a decrease in construction and an increase in service due to operational costs and energy cost increases. So we're going to get ahead of the curve and build an energy course, an operations course, and a sales course focused on retrofit sales and consultative selling.
Yeah.
And so you'll start to see a lot of podcast episodes on that. And then you'll see webinars that'll build our email list, which we'll then use to go and market the course to those people.
First of all, brilliant strategy. You've read some books on strategy.
Just a little.
No, so Phil, why teach? Why spread the knowledge? Why not just continue to excel in kind of a service role or a technician role, or why not go and kind of work the ladder at a major manufacturer? Why not be the CEO of JCI?
Because I like the control. I am an idea person, not an execution person. I like the ideas. I like coming up with them and then handing them off to execute, which you could argue you could do as like a chief strategy officer
Sure.
or as a chief executive officer. But I also like the flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I decide after this interview to go on a walk with my wife, yeah, I'll do it.
Done.
I'm speaking at a strategic conference with like the chief sustainability officer of the GSA and the EPA and stuff like that in Washington, D.C. in September.
Yeah.
And we're going to turn that actually into a week trip where we're going to go to D.C. and then we're going to go to New York.
Yeah.
And, those are the things you have flexibility to do. That's an interesting question, though. At times, if I'm totally honest and transparent, I miss being an employee because you don't have necessarily the responsibility.
Yeah.
It's tough being an entrepreneur. I have a whole team whose livelihoods are dependent on me making the right choice. And the thing is like, if you're good at what you do, you're going to have hundreds of great ideas, but you can only execute 2 or 3 of them.
Right.
And, look at the economy and look at what's going on. I have to make a bet that energy management, operational efficiency, workforce development, and sales are the 4 horses that I'm going to ride that are going to grow the business.
Yeah. So why teaching then?
It's a good question that I honestly don't have an answer for. I've really wondered that myself. If I look back at another mentor, Keith Reller, who the podcast is going to be coming out with him shortly. We just recorded one. This guy's forgotten more about sales than I've ever known. Yeah. And he and I worked together. I was his development engineer and he was the sales manager. And we sold analytics. And I always loved going in. And this is right when I was making that shift from being very ego-driven to not being very ego-driven. And I would go in, and because I read and absorb information so quickly, I would be the technical expert. And I would love it. It was like star of the show. And so that was fun. I always have liked communicating. And honestly, I get a thrill out of our success stories. So we had a guy who was a student in Iran, and he wanted to flee the country with his wife. He just didn't agree with the country. And through our courses, he was able to get sponsored and move to Australia. We have another guy who came out of, oh my gosh, I think it was Nigeria. It might have been Ethiopia. But he was able to come over to the U.S. through our courses, which, I mean, I don't know how he funded them on their income, but he did. And through the courses, got a job as a development engineer here. And now he's in the process of bringing his family over to America.
Those are amazing stories.
I got dozens of those stories. Those are really cool. I actually have a rug. I'll send you a picture of it. It's a custom made, it's like a tapestry rug. It was handmade by this guy from Iran's wife.
Wow.
And, it's really cool.
I mean, and how rewarding is that really? I mean, to use your natural giftings, your natural desires, your desire to learn, and then turn around, unbeknownst to you exactly why, to really change people's lives.
I mean, I've always had a desire, like, I look back, I had a desire to be a church pastor. I've had a desire to do missions. I've had a desire to, mentor up-and-coming business owners. I've always had a desire to teach and help people change their situations. I don't know why I've had that desire. Maybe because I grew up in a really rough childhood, and that's what I wanted for me. So I don't know.
Well, it's certainly not uncommon for people to have rough childhoods, right? But still to kind of be able to turn that around and have so much good come out of it. And I would say that, when we're in those sort of teaching roles, I too find myself being drawn to teaching and encouraging others, leading, teaching, encouraging others with creativity and enthusiasm. That's like my personal mission. And so being able to do that and help people through, whatever their backgrounds are, because they are multiple. In your case, it's ethnic differences, cultural differences, but it all kind of is then tied around this central thing of what is, how do we become these HVAC guys and experts and geniuses, to use the podcast title, to kind of better all of our lives. And you get to really, like I say, make ripples and waves around the world and in our industry for that. What as I get distracted by your amazingness and what my next question was going to be, what are one of the things that, like, from a personality trait standpoint, that you think technical reps or mechanical contractors should be learning or focusing on, again, from a personality or professional trait?
That's a tough one. I literally got asked that the other day by a customer of ours. We were talking through it, and he was telling me about how he's put some folks through our training and they've excelled and they've done great. And he's put other folks through our training and they've done nothing. They literally haven't even opened the course. And I could say that that's bad leadership. I could be like, oh, that's bad leadership. I could also say that those people are just not the people you want to have as employees. So I look back and I'm brought back to this one tech who I'd crossed him off. I make pretty quick decisions about people, and that's not good. It's just my upbringing. And I've worked on it, but I wasn't as mature back in my late 20s, and he's working for me. I just thought he was an idiot. I just did. I just, like, this guy is not, like, literally not smart. And he totally changed my perspective on things and humbled me, because he would show up every morning at 5:30 in the morning. He said to me, he said, Phil, are you willing to meet me for coffee 5:30 in the morning? I'll buy you coffee. And, he made way less than I did. And he still chose to meet me, and he would just pick my brain every morning. And he would go do exactly what I told him. And just through grit and persistence, he ended up being a great performing technician. And it really humbled me, because I was like, okay, just because someone maybe doesn't communicate a certain way or doesn't present themselves a certain way, you really have to hold back judgment, because with work ethic, like I said, it all comes down to process. This stuff is not rocket science. If we can put people through a 9-month boot camp and they can get a job at Google working on programming, then surely people can learn how to install some pitot tubes, mount a controller, and connect some wires. It's not that hard. But it came down to, and that's when I realized modalities too. That was the first inkling of modalities, because I taught everyone how I learned, which is visual. And this guy was very kinesthetic. I don't learn through my hands. I can literally look at something, and it's the weirdest gift. I can look at something and I could be like, that's 14 inches. And I could just, boom. I've always had that ability, but I don't learn kinesthetically. This guy learned kinesthetically and auditory. Those were his two strengths. So by talking and me explaining something and then him going and working on it with his hands, that's how he started to learn. And I was like, oh, you mean not everyone could just read and figure it out?
You mean not everyone just does this on their own? You mentioned work ethic. Do you think that's something that can be taught?
I think it's something that can be gained with proper mentorship and motivation. But, oh my gosh, this is where you need to talk to my chief operating officer, who happens to be my wife, who is a psychotherapist. So she's dealt with people exiting prisons, people from, all sorts of crazy backgrounds, and she really helps us analyze the psychology of our students and what makes them succeed and not succeed. She would tell me that that's cultural. And when cultural is not the right word. What's the
Anthropological.
right word? She would say that that's maybe it's a lot of it is upbringing and the surroundings and what gets rewarded and what doesn't get rewarded. That being said, I've seen people from all backgrounds strive and succeed. I think it really comes down to, is there a why to justify that work ethic? Because work ethic, I don't think, is this overarching thing. You know, if you were to say, Phil, what's your work ethic for keeping a clean office? It's terrible.
0 to 100. What's your work ethic?
It's horrible. On a clean office, probably 5%.
Oh, see, I didn't even say percentage, but you added the percentage to it.
But, you know, if you said, Phil, what is your work ethic when it comes to marketing or growing the business? Yeah, that's close to 90.
Because your why is different.
So, yeah, exactly. My why is I have people to keep employed. I see the impact on the industry and the people. There's still a little ego motivation there and self-worth tied
you
there.
can't set aside competition, right? You know, or the kind of competitive nature you have. That's a good thing.
Oh, I love to destroy people. My team, it's not good. It's not good at all. I will obsessively focus on competition, which is a stupid thing to do because, you know, it doesn't matter. You know, be aware of what they're doing, but work your plan and be excellent at your plan, and everything takes care of the rest. But yeah, like I said, it's that switch. I go and I'm like, oh, someone did a perceived slight to me. I just want to destroy them. And it's not good.
No.
But it's who I am. It's just real.
Yeah. But you know what? You're aware of it. And I think that's really the biggest thing, right? And you're not going out there and this is kind of a general topic for anyone that has any bit of competitiveness in them, which is, I think, all over the industry and in a lot of healthy ways. But an unhealthy way is when you're just kind of unfiltered in how you approach others and how you and you don't have that self-awareness, and it's damaging in the long run. It's not helpful for you, and it's not helpful for anyone else. And one of the things that I'm trying to do, like with this podcast even, is reach across the aisle, if you will, to some of our kind of known competitors in the space, because these kinds of conversations are universal. And how we can encourage other people to have these kinds of conversations, and then to even think, like, you know, how have I learned what I've learned? And then am I passing it on? Am I encouraging others in any sort of way or capacity to know more or do better or work with a higher quality? Like this idea of being professionally minded or profitability minded at whichever sort of tier or level in an organization you are, I think could help contribute to some people that have a problem with their why. You know, why are you doing this? Well, what if you kind of take a couple steps and look very tangibly at what you're doing and how you're contributing?
Yeah. So I got a big smile on my face when you said that, because like, this is how ridiculous my competitive drive is. And it's not even competitive. It's just like win at all costs. I'll go on some of these like Facebook groups. They're like these HVAC tech groups, and they're talking. They're like, oh, my boss drives a this and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, you know what? I will gladly trade with you what I paid in taxes last year for your life.
Yeah.
Because it's not bad. It's not roses. I'm telling. And so then that competitive side of me comes out, and I start typing, and then it's like, nope. It's like, nope. And my team teases me on Slack about it. They're like, did you stay off Facebook today? I'm like, yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did. I was a good boy.
Did you delete your alter ego account so that,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I think you're spot on, because there's so many organizations that, I mean, they could, and the silliest thing, and I think this is going to come to fruition. We saw it come to fruition in COVID. We saw it come to fruition in 2008. And it's like institutionally, organizations forget. They don't absorb this, I feel. But the people who are going out and educating their customers and coming alongside them and problem solving with them with accountability. This is one of the things I tell one of our sales guys who's awesome at relationships, but he's too awesome at relationships. And he doesn't hold an equally weighted relationship with his customers. Whereas he gives, but doesn't hold them accountable to give back. So it's a delicate balance. But the organizations that bring expertise and say, hey, we're going to partner, we're going to solve this problem, we're going to figure out how we increase patient satisfaction so that you get better reimbursements in your hospital, or how do we increase tenant satisfaction so your lease renewals go up, or how do we increase student satisfaction so that you are getting proper educational transfer in a K through 12 environment. Having those kind of conversations is going to build business and it's going to build relationships. But I feel like we're so focused on, hey, we got this new product and it's great. And, product management said we need to market it. So we're going to do a blitz. And that brings no value.
What is your key piece of advice right now for, let's talk to the owners or the managers at mechanical contractors or controls contractor companies, as they need to train up their workforce for what's here now, coming in the next 5 to 10 years? What are the skill sets that you see are lacking the most that they need to deep dive into now?
Okay, I'll tell you statistically. So we've had over 4,000 people go through our free online skill assessment now. And, we built out this 2 to 3 hour online skill assessment that tests across 49 technical domains. And we give it freely to everyone. And, what it does is it does two things. It tells us what the industry knows, and it also drives our course creation. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yep.
But statistically, backnet integration, still a huge creation of callbacks, chargebacks, project delays. And it's so simple. Backnet is ridiculously simple. It's very interesting to me that we as an industry haven't learned this thing that's been around 30 years. It all comes back to processes.
Yeah.
Additionally, understanding HVAC sequencing. So not HVAC theory as much as sequencing and interrelationships between systems. So systems thinking. So if I open all my VAV boxes, that does what to pressure, and pressure does what to my fan at the air handler, which does what to my delta across my coil, which if all of my air handlers are doing that, does what to my plant. It's that systems thinking. That is true in construction. That's true in commissioning. That's especially true in troubleshooting. You've got, hey, I've got 50 VAV boxes all served by the same air handler. None of them have flow. Let's go troubleshoot the VAV boxes. It's like, well, none of them have flow.
Yeah. Well,
so
we need to go look at all of them.
Yes, every one, just to verify that they all truly don't have flow. But understanding that would be a big one. The biggest thing I've seen that has been super impactful to people is mastering submittal creation and submittal documentation. Proper submittals are going to reduce slippage on bill of materials. They're going to increase submittal approval rates, which then means you can order material quicker. I like to teach people in our project management course that you need to run your project as a P&L. Meaning that as soon as you can get your project cash flow positive, that means it's not drawing cash from the business, which means that the business owner can divert that cash that would be funding the project to other things that are going to grow the business. So there's that. And then finally, programming, design pattern thinking. So you don't decide to build a house or to build whatever, and you're just, you put a bunch of wood in a shaker and shake it, and out comes a house. You have a pattern. There's a pattern for a doorway. There's a pattern for a window. There's a pattern for a truss. There are patterns in everything. Mm-hmm. Learning how to program from a programmatic mindset or design pattern mindset rather, will make it so much easier to program, because you'll say, okay, I have an outside air damper that needs to be enabled. I have a chilled water plant that needs to be enabled. I have a hot water plant that needs to be enabled. They're all the same pattern. It's a comparative block that compares two analog values, a set point and a process value, and then drives a Boolean on-off that enables that loop, either the chilled water loop, the hot water loop, the economizer. And you learn that one pattern, and you learn how to read a sequence and identify this wording means this pattern. Then you literally build your programs with patterns, and it makes it so much quicker.
Yes, and replicable.
Yes. And then you can actually go and real quickly, if you do that, you can troubleshoot that easily as well, right? Because you can go, all right, there's that pattern. I know what that's doing or should be doing.
What about IP networking, IT? Are you seeing a lot of needs around that, or a lot of gaps?
Yeah, definitely. IT for building automation professionals is our most popular course. We actually had a major OEM that was using CompTIA Network Plus to train all their techs, and they replaced it with our IT course.
Yeah. Because yours is contextualized.
It's exactly. It is focused on what do you need to know from a building automation perspective. You don't need to know EIGRP routing protocols. Mm-hmm. You don't need to know, like, how do you dynamically build ARP tables. That stuff doesn't matter. What you need to know is how do you do subnet math so that you can go to the IT person and request IP addresses. Yeah. And when do you use a static versus dynamic IP address?
Right.
Those kind of things. So those are really important. I think what is more important around IT and doesn't get talked about enough is the automation aspects of IT. So like everyone should have a virtual image of their BAS software. And basically when they go to deploy a server, they should deploy a BAS server image and license that server image. Mm-hmm. That would save 2 to 4 hours. And you stretch that across thousands of jobs. Yeah. You're saving, 4,000 hours.
It helps you get more positive cash flow for that project sooner.
Yeah.
Right.
Additionally, I believe that people need to learn how to better convey the importance of things like analytics, things like naming standards. They need to understand things like user flow. So someone sit behind your user, watch them navigate a graphic. Mm-hmm. If you have a graphic that is easy for them to navigate, they're going to utilize the business, which is statistically, or utilize the building automation system, which is statistically proven to go and decrease callbacks. The more people use stuff, the less they call you back. And actually, I don't have statistics on this, but I've seen it play out in my own business life, is if they are using the system, they tend to want to upgrade it. Mm-hmm. They tend to want to expand it.
Yes. Yeah, we talk about that a lot from like a software as a service standpoint. It helps you retain those customers when they're actually using it. When you're asking them to pay for something they don't use, well, why in the world would I do that?
I know.
Yes.
It's the worst feeling to have to go sell. You get the command from on high that says, all right, version 5.0's out. Everyone go sell the upgrade.
Yep.
And it's awesome. Like these people are still at not even a version of the current software. They're at the previous generation of the software. They don't care.
That has no transition, built in. So we're just going to have to do a rip and replace. We got some good news, customer.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started on BACnet SC, which has not made me a lot of friends.
No, you've made some waves. Those are the not positive waves, right? I think it's causing a lot of good conversation. It's great conversation.
We did not get a sale because of my podcast on BackNet SC.
Oh, wow.
We went to a major OEM, and my sale call was going great. And this one person piped in, but yeah, Phil Zito doesn't like BackNet SC.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they didn't want to do business with us.
As opposed to engaging with the argument that you have and what your concerns are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just, I'm not going to rehash it here. People could go listen to the podcast.
Sure.
But I think we can't live in an echo chamber. Mm-hmm. I am not always right. And I love when people point out that I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. And I seek that from my team, and I seek that publicly.
Yep.
But if we just echo everyone else, we're never going to grow.
We were recently, I was featured on a podcast with Kaba. It's about to release. So by the time this episode releases, the Kaba podcast should be out. But one of the things we talked about was language and how you use language when you talk to people, and how you want to sell something that's compelling. Like we're talking about sales. But you also want to present something that is that sounds forward thinking, like, we're staying up to date. So something as simple as machine learning or artificial intelligence, it's really just math. And in some cases, people are overstretching the term, machine learning or AI. But without that, maybe they're going to miss out on some sales or opportunities or conversations. So it's always about threading that line about, what is overstating something and what is telling it as it is. But those buzzwords also, I think, are symptoms of echo chambering. So-and-so used digital transformation. Now we need to use digital transformation.
Oh, yeah.
So-and-so used AI. So now we need to use AI. And again, in some cases, very good. In other cases, overstating. And so I think it's good when people ask questions of the status quo and of the echo chamber, to make sure that A, to validate whether it's actually helpful, or B, or two, I can't remember if I said one or A, is to make sure that we're holding each other accountable for honesty of what's actually happening in the space.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, what is the next 5-10 years for the Academy?
Okay, so we're going to grow workforce development this year to 240 students. Next year, I want to get it to 2,000 students. I want to use that money to fund us hiring. I'm not sure what technologies, but right now I'm leaning to AV, solar, so photovoltaic, solar, audio, visual, access control, and lighting. I want to hire instructors in that, build out the same process framework, and then build out workforce development paths and training paths for that. And then I really want to grow our consultative side of our business. We don't advertise it at all. It's totally word of mouth, but a customer will talk to me or will talk to my director of sales, and they'll hear our advice and strategy. And they'll say, can we hire you to build out our business processes? Can we hire you to build out our sales processes, et cetera? And we're really good at that. And it's something I enjoy because I can do it and then I can hand it off to someone. But right now we're so focused on workforce development.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, I believe, where most of our revenue is going to come from. I mean, taking a postal carrier and turning them into a technician in 11 weeks is pretty unheard of in our space.
An undisciplined civilian.
Yeah. Well, I probably shouldn't have used those words. It's going to offend some people who aren't going to take it as the joke I meant.
Yeah. I like it.
But yeah, some of the military folks are like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Phil, I honestly, I so appreciate this conversation and talking to you. I feel like you kind of pulled back the curtain a little bit on what you're doing and like the approach you're taking. And I think it's so valuable. And again, I hear your name all the time, and so many people just appreciate what you're doing in the way that you're contributing and the manner in which you're contributing. And so adversity or not, keep going, Phil. I think you really are a building genius to the T. And, you're taking people and you're telling people to think about this work that they're doing a little bit differently. You're telling them to think about it in terms of value. And then you're spreading that to all these other disciplines as well. So thank you. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So that wraps this episode of the Building Geniuses podcast, a production of KMC Controls. If you've enjoyed this conversation, we encourage you to subscribe and share. And if there's anyone that you think should be on the podcast, tag them in the comments or reach out to us on social. We'll tag them in the comments. And as always, we appreciate you listening. Until next time, learn something new, teach someone something, and build your inner genius.